Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Stearns Family Adventures. And this was me just a year ago. So, what we got for you today is a little bit different. We're not going to be out doing something today. Today's a very special day for me, and we're going to get into that story and why June 12th will always be a very important day in my life. If you don't know, I'm just 31 years old and had no health issues, no nothing, just lived my life. So let's rewind about 2 years ago. It was March 6th, 2018. At that time, I'm working in the hospital. I'm still working graveyard, and I woke up from my nap about 7 p.m. and normally I'll eat dinner and then I'll head into work for the night. And so as I'm eating dinner, Ashley's in the kitchen cooking. Out of nowhere, BAM! Blank. My right eye goes black. When I say black, I mean I could not see anything out of it. There was no pain, no nothing, I just couldn't see out of it. So, not knowing what that meant or what to do, I told Ashley, and Ashley and I both kind of were just sitting there confused because I didn't just fall over and hit my head, so why can't I see out of my right eye? So the only thing I could think of was that it was something to do with maybe my sinuses. I don't know. You know how when you close your eyes for a long time and then you open them back up and it takes a while for your vision to come back? I thought maybe it could have been that. Had no idea, so I thought let me just take a really warm shower. Maybe that might clear up my sinuses or whatever was going on. So that's what I decided to do. But unfortunately that didn't work. And I got out of the shower, I still couldn't see, so I told Ashley, it had been about 30 minutes, I said, we gotta go into the emergency room. So there we go, off to the emergency room. So once we get to the emergency room, they put me in what we call minor care, and first they start asking me questions. They wanted to see what was going on with me, and I told them I had this eye issue, so they called the ophthalmologist in. He came in, he dilated my eye, and immediately when he looked in, he said, you have a large clot right in your optic nerve. And now, for those who don't know, that means that's the main nerve that supplies blood to the eye. And so I had a blood clot there that's blocking all the blood flow to that eye, which in turn stops it from getting oxygen, and then the cells will eventually start to die. So with the diagnosis like that, there's a couple reasons why that can happen. You can have atherosclerosis, you can have high cholesterol, blood pressure, things like that that might induce plaque to get in your bloodstream and go to your eye, which I don't have. Or if I was recently in a car accident and had a blunt force trauma to my head or my eye, people can get them that way. Or I could have been having a stroke, and instead of going to my head, though, it went to my eye. So he had to rule that out. So basically what happened that night was I had to go straight to the MRI machine. They needed to rule it out. Now, if you've never been in an MRI machine, it is the worst. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes. They lay you in this tube that literally is just about the size around your body, and they bring this clamp over you and put it on your chest so you can't move, and it actually sits on your face as well, and then they give you earbuds. And I said, well, why are you giving me earbuds? And they told me it's going to be really loud. And I was like, okay. And they just say, I'm going to put you in there and don't move. So luckily I don't have claustrophobia or anything like that, but even for me, it still was very weird. In that situation, me just being in the emergency room, I'm already nervous. I can't see out of my eye. I don't want to just sit still for 30 to 45 minutes. So it was hard. Once they put me into the machine, they weren't lying. You just hear these noises like click, 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 brrr, just like really loud. I had no idea what was going on. It's taking these pictures, and eventually the time passed. I just closed my eyes and I was trying to just fall asleep. And the time passed, so they took me back to the room, and then they said they wanted to draw some blood because they wanted to run other tests, because after the MRI it came back, it showed I didn't have a stroke, I didn't have any of the other symptoms of a stroke. So they said, okay, we could rule that out, but now we got to start going down the list. So they also took me to the CT room, and that's a lot better. That's just a machine, it's a round tube, and you literally just go in and out. It takes, I don't know, 15-20 seconds. It was a lot better. But then when I got back, they wanted to test other things. So they said, we're gonna test you lupus, cancer, everything, cholesterol, diabetes, all that kind of stuff, which I don't have, but they got to do their process. And they took, it was about eight or nine tubes of blood, which I hate needles. I cannot stand them. They hurt. I'm terrified of them. It's not fun. And so they draw the blood, they send it off, and basically there was nothing else for them to do in the immediate sense. I had the clot in my eye, however, I had no other symptoms. I wasn't having a stroke. There was no reason for me to stay there overnight. So with the blood test, they were gonna take a couple days for everything to come back. So they decided to send me home that night to follow up with my ophthalmologist the next day. So the next day I go, I see the ophthalmologist, and he brings up my MRI. He's looking at all the veins in my neck, around my heart, and everything looks good. There's no plaque, there's no damage, there's no nothing. So he, you know, it was like, why? He still was confused. He's like, I don't understand why this happened to you. He dilated my eyes again and looked in there, and at that point, the clot was gone. So that was good. My body dissolved it, or it dislodged and got sent out anyway. But unfortunately, because it had been so long, when I started looking this stuff up, if you have a clot in your eye for more than 3 hours, the damage from the eye not having oxygen for that long can be permanent. So, you know, I was praying when I woke up the next morning, my eyesight would be back. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But after I met with him, he couldn't see anything straight up wrong, so he wanted to refer me to a neurologist, a specialty doctor, to see if they had any other insight. So basically, over the next couple months, it literally took about all summer, I see this special neurologist, and he starts running tests. So he said, you know, the test for cancer came back negative, lupus negative, all that kind of stuff. So he said, let's keep running down the list. Started drawing, they would draw blood for something else, comes back negative. Okay, let's draw blood for this, come back negative. I didn't have a clotting disorder. Everything came back negative, literally. Everything they kept testing for was negative, negative, negative. He's like, we couldn't figure it out. They're like, you're a young, healthy individual. Why did this happen to you? One of the last times I met with him, he said, which is good in a doctor, he told me, I'm not gonna take no for an answer. I'm not gonna just say it just happened. He wanted to find out why, and he said if you had a clot in your eye, the most likely place that it came from was your heart. So he asked me, do you have any heart problems? Of course, I said no. I used to run track, I played basketball. No, I don't have any heart problems. I'm fit, I'm in shape. No, it's not that. But he was like, I want to just check off everything. So he said, I'm going to send you to a cardiologist. So I said, okay. So I go see a cardiologist. Now, seeing a cardiologist in itself is very terrifying, especially for someone my age. Typically, you don't see that young of patients in a cardiologist's office unless they have other underlying conditions. So I remember very clearly, I went with my mom. The cardiologist came, introduced himself, and he put a little stethoscope on my chest, and as soon as he did, you could see the look in his face, and I knew that look, and it meant something's wrong. So I looked at him and I'm like, what is it? And he said, you have a very loud heart murmur. And I said, okay. And he said, that's a little concerning. He was like, I'm gonna need to run some more tests. So started running some more tests. I had a EKG, I had an echocardiogram, I had pretty much everything. A TEE, which is a procedure where you get knocked out real quick and they stick a tube down your throat and they can see the backside of your heart. It produces a much clearer image. They can take measurements, all kinds of things like that. So I had that done, and what turned out is that I had a birth defect in my heart. The structural abnormality inside your heart, you have valves. There's 3 total, and 2 of mine were faulty. So one of them, there's 2 leaflets and they sit like this and they cross over. Well, one of mine was too short. So basically what happens is every time the heart pumps blood out to the body, instead of closing all the way back, it was still open. So blood that didn't get sent out was coming back into my heart and just sitting there. And you don't want that, because inside your heart, you have the chambers. It can pool up in little pockets in your heart and it can start to clot, which is what he thought happened to me. And eventually over time, If the clot gets big enough and it doesn't dissolve on its own, then it can shoot out, and that's how you have a stroke, or in my case, the clot in my eye. So what does that mean? Now I'm freaked out. And he just says, you know, I remember as soon as he said it, my mom just starts crying in the back corner. I'm trying to hold it together because I'm like, what's going on? One, he said, because I had a clotting issue, I was gonna have to be on a blood thinner right away. I'm a pharmacist. I know about blood thinners. I know what they do to the body. They're not fun. So of course I was not happy to hear that, but I got to do what I had to do. Second, he said I need to run some more tests. And in the process of this, he also saw that my aorta, the big vein or artery that shoots blood out to the body, it was dilated. And when anything gets dilated, if you imagine if you get a rubber band and pull it really far, it gets weaker. And the problem with that is if it dilates too much, if your blood pressure spikes for whatever reason, or if it just gets weak enough in general, it can split. And if that splits, that's almost a near fatal thing, unless you can get straight to the hospital and straight into surgery. There's like a very small window you have for a ascending aortic dissection is what it's called. So that was devastating. He said I had a dilation, and so then we had to monitor it, because since this was new, I don't know if I've had it all my life, or I don't know if there was lifestyle changes that I was doing because I weight lift, if the pressure, anything like that caused it. And so he said we need to monitor it, because we need to know, have you had this for a long time? Is it new? Is it growing? What do we need to do? He did tell me at that point I was going to need to have heart surgery, which I was like, I'm okay, because I didn't, at that point, there was no permanent damage to my heart. And so he recommended it. He said, you're young. If you get it now, we can take care of it and you don't get any permanent damage to your heart. So in the meantime, he also noticed, looking at me, that I'm very tall and thin as is. I have a deviated septum, I have scoliosis, and he said I wanted to test you for this genetic disease called Marfan syndrome, which I happen to have known before when I was in rotations during school. Somehow it came up at one of the hospitals and I looked it up, and so I actually knew about it. But basically it's a connective tissue disorder that it makes your vessels weaker, and then it also comes with some structural abnormalities, which I had, particularly in the heart, my scoliosis, the deviated septum. So I had to go get more blood drawn, and they did a genetic testing and they ran it, and basically Marfan syndrome is a specific mutation on this certain gene, and if you have it, then that means you have Marfan syndrome, and it can manifest in a whole array of different things. Some people might not have any effects from it even though they have the disease, or some might have very severe symptoms, which we actually experienced. Ashley and I were up in Monterey at the aquarium, and we saw this group of kids. They all had the same color shirts on, and this was right after I got diagnosed. And they were, some of them were like super tall, like taller than me, which I'm 6 feet. They were close to like 6'5", 6'6", and they were just pencil thin. They had, their legs were curved. I could see them really bad, like hunchback. Like they just had very severe structural abnormalities, unfortunately. And as they walked by, the back of their shirt said the Marfan Foundation, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, so it kind of hit me at home. So the test came back. Those took a couple weeks, I think, and it came back, and it was unique because I did have a mutation on that gene. However, it had never been recorded before. So what does that mean? So basically they said, we have to treat you like you have Marfan's because it's probable, but we can't say for sure because your mutation has never been actually documented before. So that was just icing on the cake. Now what do I do with this information? I have this genetic disorder I've had since birth. I have these heart abnormalities now, and I can't see out of my right eye. And this all happened in a couple of months. It was just like my life kind of was falling apart. Now I have the diagnosis. I have what's going on. I know. So what do we go from here? At the time, again, they were encouraging it. You get the surgery. And I'm like, no. So they said, okay, every 6 months, we're going to have to do the echo. We're going to have to do a CT of your chest, and we have to measure your aorta to make sure it's not getting bigger. I said, fine. So the first 6 months go, they measure it again, didn't change. Second time they go, measure it, didn't change. But the third time, I go get it, and it grew, and it grew a lot, right to the point where I technically wasn't at the threshold where it's like you need surgery, but I was really close. And again, being in the medical field, I know about this diagnosis. I know what a dissection means if it happens. I didn't want to take that risk. It was growing, so obviously it wasn't something I've lived with my whole life. It's something that was getting worse as I go on. So I made the choice and decision that I was going to have this open heart surgery. So we met with the surgeon. I had a bunch of questions to ask him. Being in the medical field, I kind of knew what to ask, how to go about it. He told me that he hoped when he goes in, he would be able to fix my valves and not replace them, because if you get them replaced, there's two types. There's tissue valves, or the mechanical or metal valves, and there's benefits and cons to both of those. And without getting too much into that, for me, being as young as I am, something this will be the rest of my life, I had to go with the mechanical one. And one of the big cons with that is it means I have to be on a blood thinner for the rest of my life, because the metal, your blood can stick to it easier, and you can form a clot and then have a stroke and go through that whole procedure again. So if we thin the blood, it slides over the valves a lot easier, it doesn't stick. So unfortunately, I have to be on that for life. So June 12th, 2019, it's the big day. I have to show up to the hospital at 5 o'clock. Somehow I was pretty calm. They took me straight back, started prepping me. They had to shave me from my neck down. They inserted a peripheral line in this vein right here in the back of my arm. And then basically they brought in all my family once I was ready for surgery. It was about 7 a.m. and it was really hard, because at that point I was fine. I kept it all together, even though in my mind I knew open heart surgery is open heart surgery. I know the implications of it. I know how severe it can be, even though it's much better now than it was years ago. And it never really hit me until the surgeon was just like, okay. He's like, are you ready, Nick? And I was like, yeah. And he said, okay, say bye to your parents and we're gonna wheel you back there. And when he said that, it just like hit me. Not that I'm trying to be negative or whatnot, but I knew when I go to sleep, there was a chance that could have been the last time. And so I couldn't even look at my parents, because I was just gonna start bawling. And so they left, and then they gave me a sedative, and they said, okay, we'll see you after. And they start wheeling me off, and then I pass out. So that was about 7 a.m. I knock out, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up. My eyes are still closed, but I hear voices, and I open up and I see about 4 different nurses standing above me, and they're saying, stop breathing, stop trying to breathe. And basically what they're saying is, at that time I was still intubated, which means I had the tube down my throat and I was on a vent. So the machine is breathing for me, but patients, when they start waking up, they do what they call fight the vent. And your body, you wake up and there's a tube down your throat. Your natural thing is you want to cough it out, you want to get it out. And we don't want you to do that until they pull it out. That's why they have to keep me sedated. So surgery finished around noon, but I was still sedated up until 6 p.m.-ish. So I'm awake and I hear that, and then I see the doc say, no, pull the vent, let's wake him, let's get him ready. And so they start pulling it. I remember it got to like about here, and it like stops, and then they go, you have to get past your gag reflex, so I need you to cough really hard. So I tried to cough as hard as I could, and then they just forced the rest of it out. And once they did that, I was just so thirsty. My throat, the worst it's ever been. So that was that. That night, the big thing, they had told me, I know nurses from working in the hospital. Prior to that, I went down into the ICU and I was asking them, tell me everything you know about this procedure, about afterwards, because I'm the type of person, I like to know exactly what's happening to me, what's gonna happen, and how everything goes. And so those nurses were great. They told me everything. Some of them actually worked at that hospital in the cardiac unit. So they said, this is what you expect. As soon as you wake up, they're gonna want you to walk, which I'm young. I've never had this feeling before. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just walk before. When I woke up, just being on a vent for, in total with the surgery, was about around 12 hours. I lost all function. Like I could barely breathe. Every time I tried to take a breath, it was just, and then I couldn't go anymore. And then if I tried to get up, I was just completely out of breath. It felt like I had just run a mile, even though I took 2 steps. It was the trippiest thing for me. But that night, the nurse, he kept getting me, and he's like, come on, let's take a walk, let's see how far you can go. And I would get a couple steps, and go back, and then A couple hours later, a couple more steps. And we just basically kept repeating that. My stay in the hospital was great. Every day it amazed me how much better I got. I had no appetite though, so I wasn't eating, and after surgery, especially on your heart, it swells and there's a lot of fluid around your heart, so they have to be on these diuretics that get the fluid out. In addition to these tubes that were sticking, they're about right here on my chest, and they're draining the excess fluid. Well, the other fluid, it just ends up going straight to your ankles and your legs, so my legs were swelling up huge. So my weight actually was going up, but it was because it was water weight. But I wasn't eating, and so I was actually losing muscle mass. So when I got discharged after 6 days, I mean, I was just super skinny and frail, and it was like a low point in my life because I could barely walk. I just felt terrible. But I got to go home, so that was much better. But I don't think I'll ever be able to thank Ashley and my family enough. They really shocked me during the hospital stay. Not shocked, but it was just nice to have, because my parents would come and they would stay all day and then leave at night to come watch our house or whatnot. But Ashley would stay all day. And they don't have extra stuff in the hospital room. It's just a wooden bed, and she just would sit there all day. When I say all day, I mean all day. She would be there about 23 hours out of the day. She only went home to shower. It blew my mind, but it made my hospital stay so much better because I never felt alone. Even though I had nurses, I had great nurses, but I always had her right there by my side, and it's just something I can't adequately show gratitude for, because it just blew me away. So now I'm home. They finally discharged me. Right before they discharged me, they wanted to see if I had any fluid around my lungs, and I did, but I didn't have enough to where they could stick a needle in and take it out. So they said I was suitable for discharge. And at that time, they started the anticoagulation medication, but it takes about 5 to 7 days, depending on the dose, etc., to get you to where you need to be. And so in the meantime, there's a shot that is more immediate, and it'll cover you until the other drug gets to where we need it to be. So I had to take these injections in my stomach twice a day, and luckily they trained Ashley before we left how to do it, and she actually would give me these injections, which were not fun. They burned, but we had to do what we had to do. But once I was home, I noticed it was way better. Just being at home, I wanted to get up. I would walk like to the mailbox and then come back to see how it was. And it was just every day from there, I just started getting better and better and better. And I also had friends come visit me. Some even came in the hospital, and some other ones came and visited me afterward. And the amount of love and support I got from my friends, it was just something it really touched me. It made me feel good, and it helped me get through these hard times. It just made me appreciate what I had in my life and what I should be thankful for. Break. And so basically that's it. That's the story of why I had open heart surgery. I did have it. I did recover. It's been a year now. I'm in the best shape of my life. I don't feel any different physically. And here I am a year later. It was a successful surgery. I haven't had any complications with it afterwards. I recovered very fast in the sense of how open heart surgeries go. I hear some stories of other more elderly patients, and they take months to recover, years. Sometimes they don't really fully recover, but here I am. It took me in 2 months, a little bit, right before 2 months, I was back at work and started to go back in the gym. I had to go a little bit slower, but here I am now. I'm the heaviest I've ever weighed in a good way. I gained all that muscle back and the weight back. I'm very fit now. Because of my blood thinner, it relies on physical activity, the levels in your body, so I actually have to work out a lot to maintain the dose I'm currently on, which I do by choice. I can always say I don't want to work out as much, and then they can lower the dose, but I like where I'm at now. It keeps me active. It makes me have to work out about 4 or 5 times a week, which is healthy, right? So I don't have a problem with that. And yeah, here I am. I'm so thankful that I had it done. I'm thankful now that I had the blood clot in my eye, because I never knew about this condition I've apparently had all my life. somehow it's went under the radar, and it basically saved my life. I wouldn't have known this happened, and eventually I would have just kept dilating until it bursted, and you know, it could have been fatal. So I am thankful. I did never get the eyesight back, but it's pretty amazing how your body adjusts. The neurologist and the ophthalmologist, they had told me you're gonna adapt to it very quickly, because before, it's like if you cover one of your eyes, you'll see black. And that's how I was when it first happened, and it annoyed me because no matter where I looked, I always just saw half my vision was just black, and it annoyed me. But then your eyes actually adjust, and now I don't even notice it. Yes, I can't see as far on my peripheral side, but to me now that's normal. I don't really remember what it was like to have both full views of eyesight, so you know, I don't really worry about it too much or care. I can still drive. I had to retake my license test because when it happened, the DMV wanted me to prove to them that I was suitable to drive, which I am. I don't have any problems doing that, but I had to physically retake behind the wheel test with them, and I had to get proof from my optometrist that I was suitable to drive. That's pretty much the story of what happened to me. I feel it definitely changed my life. Some people are like, oh, I can't believe that happened to you. How do you live with that? But you know, you never know what life's gonna throw at you. All you can do is figure out how you're gonna react to it. I try and see the positives to it. I'm here, I'm healthy now. I still have a good life. We just got a house. I have a great job. I have a wonderful fiance. I'm gonna get married this year, if the freaking corona doesn't chill. And I got everything I could ask for, so life's good. Just remember, life can always take a turn for the worst at any moment, so you always gotta appreciate the life you have today, you had yesterday, and the life you're gonna have tomorrow. Oh, and so I wanted to walk you through some clips that we're gonna share with you from the actual, not the actual surgery, but afterwards, some of it in the hospital, and up until where I'm about to go home. So here we go. Basically, so this first one is what I had to get when I was getting the shots. Before the levels were where we wanted to be. This was right after I got sent home, so you could still see the stitches that are in my chest before they came out. And basically she had to give me those shots twice a day in my stomach, and you see the bruises on there because it's a blood thinner. That's expected when they're giving it. As long as they didn't get bigger or anything like that, then they're not of a concern. And once we stopped giving the injections, the bruises went away. So this picture right here, as you saw earlier, that's me in the hospital. That was, let's see, that was the second day after the surgery. And by then, actually, they had already taken a lot of the stuff out, because in the surgery, when I came out, I had the IV here, I had a central line here, I had a central line in my neck, I had the 2 tubes in my chest, and I also had an arterial line over here in my wrist. You can't really tell right here, but I'm actually in a chair sitting up, which was a big deal because before I could only stay in the bed, but then by this time I was able to get up and get to the chair. So this photo right here, this was actually, it says June 14th, so it was June 14th at 5 a.m. So that's technically after the first night in the morning, where they were already trying to have me start to walk and see all the drips that I was on. I remember I had to be on an insulin drip, I was on an epinephrine drip, norepinephrine drip, and one of those is the dilaudid PCA. So basically they give you dilaudid in a bag that's like a potent analgesic, and I could press a button and it would give me a small dose, and I could do it I think they had it set for every about 10 minutes. And so yeah, that's what you see there. So this video, you could see it's basically when I'm just leaving the hospital. I was very happy. For those of you who know me, you can see from it that I'm very thin in that photo. I lost, again, about 25 pounds that I do not have to spare. Look at my arms, they're super small, but what's interesting, if you look back again at it, you can see my legs though are huge, and my ankles are huge for me. I have very small legs anyway, so why that happened was because, again, all that fluid was stuck in my legs and ankle. That's where it all settled down. So they had me on the diuretics, but it was accumulating more than I was getting rid of it. So basically this is the last day that I was there, is after I walked out. I'll never forget that when they're like, we're gonna discharge you. I was just so thrilled to go home. You can't really tell from this picture, but it was just hard for me. Standing there waiting for the car to come, just standing was making me super tired. That shirt, if I wear it now, is tight on me, but there it was super loose, because look at me now, bam, right? So I built it back, but it just trips me out when I see these photos of me, because oh my gosh, I got so small, and I never realized it while I was in the hospital. So that's it for that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know that was a lot of talking, but I just wanted to kind of paint the whole picture of what happened to me, what I went through, and where I am now. So this date will always be engraved in my mind. I will remember this for the rest of my life. It gets me a little emotional when I think about it, with what I went through and just how crazy that experience was. After I came home, I forgot to say I couldn't lay all the way flat, because if I laid flat, the fluid would go on my lungs and it felt like I was drowning, almost similar to like those who have heart failure, unfortunately. So for a solid month, I had to sleep on the couch out here in an upright position, which was hard in itself. So every night I only got about 2 or 3 hours of sleep. One, because it was a weird position anyway, so I couldn't stay asleep, and then I would wake up in just all sorts of pain, mostly in my back, because you're sleeping in a position you're not used to having, so you're using muscles that you're not used to using, and they became sore. So it was pretty rough. And so, but tonight I'm gonna sleep on the couch tonight, just as like a little homage to what I went through, but I'll have a much easier time. That's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you have a good night.